How's everybody doing today? You're watching Slot Car Mayhem. I'm John, and this will be episode 17 of the Glendale 65. And today we're going to do one of our punch list items, and that's get these charging stations for the wireless controllers mounted off of the layout and remotely into a remote drawer. So let's go ahead and break into this thing and see what we're going to need to do. Okay, turning the unit over, we can see we've got our standard series of screws. And right here was a paper cover I just removed. That would normally tell you that that's to be removed for warranty work. And that one happens to have a Torx head screw. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get rid of the Phillips screws here first. And then we'll go ahead and we'll get the Torx head out. I still haven't gotten myself any Torx drivers, but those should be coming fairly soon. And for Torx drivers, I'm going to be using MIP brand. And I don't know if anybody's heard of MIP, but they make a fantastic tool. And they're big in the RC car market, which is where I first learned about them. And the sad part about it was I had a set for 15 years and never stripped them out. And I finally gave them, there we go. And I gave them out to a friend of mine, and he still has them. And that was 15 years ago. And he still has and uses them, and is really glad I gave those to him. But they're not cheap. They're probably a full set of MIP drivers can be in the range of $50 to $60. But I tell you what, you're not going to wear them out. They do a great job. So, okay, enough of MIP. We've got all the screws out. So let's take a look and see what we have up underneath. We'll pull our cover out. We can see it's pretty simple. We've got one small screw here that holds the circuit board in place, and other than that, it's just wires going to the terminals. So we're going to take this other screw out, and I tell you what I'm going to do. That's a little tiny screw. I'm going to put that screw back in place, back into its hole. That way I don't lose it. Okay, so we've got a couple strips here, and these strips are what contact the terminals on the accessory track or the port that you're going to slide this into. So we need to take a look and see. Here I have one of the older accessory tracks that I've pulled out and I haven't used yet. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to slide this in here just like that, just the way it would sit, just like so. And if we look here, I'm going to get me a little piece of masking tape. And I'm going to put a little piece of masking tape on this side of the circuit board, because this is the side here that has the red wire. So if I turn that over, I can see that this piece of aluminum here is where the red wire needs to go. Now if we look on the back side of the circuit board, it's red here, but it's black here. It's red here, it's black there. They're just opposite. So that's all that means. But we have to go by polarity. And this clearly indicates that the positive of the red wire goes on this side of the strip. So we'll go ahead and do that. While we're looking at this, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this piece of accessory track now. We don't need it. So while we're looking at this here, what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to go ahead and I'm going to solder some wires right here near the back. And that'll be my red and black wire. And if I do that, I don't think I'm going to be able to get that circuit board back into place. So I'll probably feed the wires out here. And looking at this, I don't have a lot of available space to mount it. There's nothing on the back side, so there's no reason why I can't put a piece of double-sided tape and be able to put the cover back in. And I'll probably have to notch the cover a little bit so the wires will go out, and I'll probably feed the wires out through this port here. So okay, let's get ourselves a piece of double-sided tape and see what we have. We don't need a big piece. So there's a little piece of double sticky tape. And I know that side's red, so I can stick that right there. And there we go. That should be plenty good. And of course my cover should still fit. The cover fits fine. Good. Okay, now all we have to do is we've got to get our wires set up and soldered in. Okay, let's go ahead and take one more look here so we can see what we have. I've taken the back side of the board and I've used a little piece of double-sided tape to attach it there. And this strip right here will be the positive. This one here will be the negative. So that should be pretty simple. Now what I'm going to do, let me move that out of the way. Let's grab a piece of wire here. I'm going to go ahead and strip about, about maybe 3/8 to a half. And I'm going to give it a little twist. Just make sure it's good. I'm going to put a little L onto it just like that. And once we've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solder this first. So let me grab my trusty solder. Make sure my tip is clean. You always want to make sure that your soldering tip is clean. And just a damp sponge, or in this case a damp paper towel, does a good job. Make sure it's clean. It transfers heat much easier when it's clean. So okay, now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pre-tin these little elbows. And I will just make sure that they're got nicely coated in solder. Okay, now that our wires are tinned, another thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to pre-tin the strips so we can attach the wire. And I'm only going to tin the back portion of these terminal strips in case I want to reuse the circuit board. So I'll go ahead and I'll put a little blob of solder very carefully on the back side of the board. Give it something to adhere to. Okay, we're back. I've done my soldering. And you can see right here, I went ahead and I've soldered the red wire right here and the black wire right here. And then I've just fed my wires out through the slot where you would normally put the clip. Now, once that's done, in order to provide a little bit of strain relief, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw a piece of my favorite duct tape and put it right up to the edge there. And I want to cinch everything down really good, and this will provide some strain relief. There's not going to be a whole lot of tension on these, but this will provide a little bit of additional protection for the wiring, just to make sure we're not pulling on the wiring and onto the circuit board itself. So that does a good job there. And another thing I did while I was at it is right here, I took my Dremel with a sanding drum and I just put a little notch right here, and that will allow the cover to fit into place. And you can see the wires right here pass through that notch, and that will allow me to go ahead and put the cover back on. So let's go ahead and get that done. Okay, here's our drawer. And what we have, first thing I did is I took a spade bit, which I have right here. I took a 3/4 inch spade bit and I drilled a hole, but not all the way through. We want to make sure we leave a little bit of a lip. And what this will do, this will allow somewhere for the conduit to sit into. And when everything's ready to go, I can go ahead and just put a little silicone in there to lock that conduit into this little recess, and it keeps everything nice and clean. And then I went ahead and I enlarged the hole on this side long enough for me to get a terminal in and drop it through with no problem. So I can pre-terminate my wires if I need to and pull them back out of the drawer. So that's all I did there. Now, all we need to do is I'm gonna set my unit over there, and I'm going to get the end of my wire, which is all the way over here. And I'm just going to go ahead and feed my wires through the hole, just like so. And we'll go ahead and we'll get this one set into place. Seeing a lot of wire here because this one's going a fairly long ways. All right, now that we have that, this one should be nice and snug fit. So there we go. And we've got our charging station wired in, and all I need to do is hook up the red and black to the red and black terminals on the terminal block, and we should be good to go. Okay, we're back at the track, and I have run the wiring from the wireless station around through and attached it to the same terminal block that I used to power the track sections, the black and red, same thing. Just, you know, red to red, black to black, very simple. And if we look in here, hopefully we can see it. I think you can see my flex loom that I have right here, and that sits in that nice little recess in the back. And the flex loom has a definite memory shape to it, and I just use that to my advantage, and it does a great job of keeping the wiring well protected, and it doesn't get caught on anything, and it lets everything just roll right back where it needs to. You can see I've got plenty of room to get the controllers in and out without hitting anything, so they work fine. And I'll go ahead and I'll turn on the control unit, and as you can see, our devices are charging. So it works pretty well. One's already charged, and we can see it works just fine. I can pull the drawers out if I need to with no problem. Everything does what it needs to do, and it all seems to work just fine. So this is actually an extremely easy upgrade to do. The one thing you do want to make sure of, though, is make sure you're using a wiring gauge that's big enough. And in this case, I use 16. If you use 20, I doubt you're going to be able to effectively charge these, or at least effectively indicate that when they're charged. I just don't think it's going to work very well using too small of a gauge wire, considering that charging a battery is very current driven, and we need to make sure we've got a wire that can take the current. So 16 gauge wire, just solder them to the circuit board just like I showed you. Run your wires and attach them where you need to attach them to. You don't have to go to a terminal block. If you want to, you could come right up here and attach them to your track sections using clips or any other method to attach them to the track rails. You don't have to go back to a terminal block, but that's what I'm doing. But you can just come right up and attach them directly to the rails of the track, because that's what the accessory tracks do anyway. So should be pretty simple. Once again, these charging stations are pretty cheap, so feel free to go ahead and, you know, knock these out and go ahead and do them. It's a very easy thing to do, and as you can see, it works just fine. So my apologies for the blinking lights. I know they're annoying. So that'll wrap up episode 17 of the Glendale 65. I'm going to go ahead and do my other stations and get those done, and we'll call this one a wrap. So if you guys have any questions or comments or anything, please just hit me up. And other than that, I want everybody to have a great night, and I look forward to getting in touch with you on the next episode. Thanks for watching. Everybody stay safe.